Which brings us to the UFOs.
There's footage and records of objects in the skies that we don't know exactly what they are.
Aliens. Yep. Aliens. Aliens.
You want to do this one real quick? Because I think this is.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, we'll bring this through here.
Yeah, sure. It's
so
this
short. Is from MSN.com. Mirrored from an outlet called The Giant Freaking Robot, which is a pretty cool name for an outlet. And I'm going to save that and look into it again later. U.S. government approves new system for reporting UFOs. The world has changed. One of the most popular science fiction television shows ever, Fox's The X-Files, thrived on the premise of the U.S. government and other clandestine organizations intervening in any and all attempts to prove the existence of UFOs. The franchise was successful enough to enjoy 11 seasons of its TV series and 2 feature films. But in today's world, it would be a dud, with the U.S. government finally bringing transparency to the subject, and the existence of the UFOs becoming more of a fact and less of a question. In 2022, David Duchovny's signature character, FBI Special Agent Fox Mulder, would find himself preaching to the choir. Now the government has gone one step further by approving a new method for reporting UFOs. As reported by Comic Book, the House of Representatives recently approved a number of amendments to the National Defense Authorization Act. Oh, that's good. Yeah, let's just mix it in with NDAA.
Yeah. Aliens.
That's a nightmare.
Aliens, man. Aliens and national defense.
Yeah. This is also NDAA was also the renewing of that act under Obama is what gave us, the virtual digital panopticon and hive mind that we live in right now.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Amendments to the NDAA, including one that will make it easier for government officials reporting UFOs or UAPs, as they're being called. The entire bill has not yet been passed by the House, though it is expected to sail through by next week. Then it will need to be approved by the Senate before it's officially official. As noted by NBC News, the bipartisan amendment for reporting UFOs was introduced by Representatives Mike Gallagher, a Republican from Wisconsin, and Ruben Gallego, a Democrat from Arizona. The
Aliens are bringing us together.
Yeah, the bipartisan alien bill. See, it's already happening. It's always been part of the narrative,
the solution,
or the deception that the aliens would create a peace on Earth, finally. The goal of the amendment is to open up, quote, immediate sharing between relevant parties, such as certain government personnel and scientists. There will, that's interesting, connecting the science with the government.
They need the priests to be
scientism.
They need the sort of information flow. The pipelines,
well, you've got
information pipelines.
You've got to check with you've got to integrate the priests of scientism with the government.
Right.
Because we wouldn't want any theocracy.
Right.
There will, however, be some exceptions. For example, if the, quote, the observed object and associated event and activities likely to relate to some kind of clandestine programs that have already been reported to the Congress's Defense and Intelligence Committees, then that immediate sharing will be curbed. So they're saying, we'll share UFOs, but if it's like the top secret black budget CIA, it does make sense.
It does, but it doesn't.
Total sense. So what they're saying here, and what's being revealed, is that they know
they have
their
these programs.
UFOs. Yeah. No, they know our UFOs versus the UFOs that aren't ours. They'll see it. They'll say, "Oh no, don't talk about that one. That's our CIA flying saucer," versus the alternative.
Sure.
The amendments for reporting UFOs are a direct.
Before you move on, I feel like that right there, that I had it highlighted because it almost makes the whole thing pointless. If they're just going to be able to be like, oh, we already know about this, so let's not escalate it. What's the point of the immediate sharing and all this kind of stuff? The only reason would be to weed out those who don't comply. Continue.
No, I want to. What do you mean? What do you mean those who don't comply?
Because
I think it's relating to if there's a UFO that is seen. If they already know what it is, like if they're like, oh, this picture was taken over Roswell this day, and then they put it to the committee and they're like, oh, well, we know the CIA was flying one of their anti-gravity mobiles, so we don't need to share this one with scientists.
Right. No, I understand that. But in the context of the greater, hey, let's have transparency. I mean, I guess this is the transparent part, but they're saying by being that, there's levels of transparency. They're telling us that basically what you're saying, but at the same time,
transparency is
obfuscating the reality of the situation is, I guess, what I'm trying to say.
And this matches up with this whole theme of transparency that we've heard from the World Economic Forum, from our own government, from Silicon Valley,
it's a buzzword
Facebook,
now.
like all these organizations that have been talking about, hey, the new world order will be transparent. That's how you can't have democracy without sunlight. We will be transparent with all the things. And what they're really saying is we will be transparent with all the things that we want to be transparent about, and then we'll keep everything else secret, which is exactly how everything's been going. But it's this rhetorical device to push for whatever they're pushing for. It's a lie, I guess. That's a fancy way of saying it's a lie.
Yeah.
The amendments for reporting UFOs are a direct response to a report released by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence from last June. Among other things, the report states that between 2004 and 2021, personnel in the military planes reported 144 different UAP or UFO sightings. It's an interesting number. Out of these 144 sightings, only one had been explained. For the rest of the 143, there wasn't enough data to make any kind of conclusive finding. Keep in mind, of course, that these 144 sightings are just those made by military personnel aboard military planes. They don't count for sightings reported by civilians. It seems, if nothing else, fitting that this news should drop just days after the public was floored by images of the universe from the James Webb Telescope. Wow.
We said it.
Yep. Folks, if you're listening to this and you don't know why I just said it in sort of that drawn out, exciting sort of voice there, you need to listen to a previous episode where we discussed the James Webb Telescope revealing their new pictures. The fact that it was revealed by the president and AOC, well, I mean, it was officially revealed by the president, speaking to the far off places, the accomplishments of science having been a couple of things. Number one, a drastic sort of amplified version of look over there. Don't look at my son Hunter and his crack. Look over there. Look as far away as you possibly can from what's going on here on Earth.
There's a clock. I think there's a clock out there.
There's a heartbeat out there. Look, we took a picture of it.
Send a CERN up there.
Right. And, we've talked about for years the idea of scientism, scientism being the religion of science, not just science, because, of course, science is, you can doubt science. You can question science. You can prove science wrong. But scientism is what our current religion of our government is, of our authority figures, being you don't question science, you trust science, you have faith in science, and the priests of science are the scientists, and the prophets are the astronauts, and this has been a long developing conversation.
Science is truth.
The James Webb Telescope being sort of this new tool that we have to look deeper into space, and we can all unite over the fact that, oh yes, our president has a cough and is falling off of bikes, and we're fighting a proxy war in Ukraine that is unjustified, and
our world is
purposefully
crumbling.
Demolishing the world economic system in order to have a phoenix rise from its ashes. But pay attention to these sparkly photos.
Deep dots out there.
Deep blurry, bright dots. The awe-inspiring photos show whole galaxies spinning out in the void, and just maybe that photographic reminder of exactly what's possible to be waiting for us out there is part of what's lighting the proverbial fire under lawmakers' butts. You can see the first of the amazing images below, and they make the point for us, folks. This outlet is making the point that we have been making, which is the James Webb Telescope is just an example, the newest example of how abstract and faraway scientific discoveries are motivating our government. They are motivating our government in ways they've never been motivated before. And this shows the aspects of the belief system of scientism as an underlying motivational factor for our government. If you will, it's almost as if, the separation of church and state is being upheld simply by renaming the church, which is science or scientism. It's more sort of academically known.
Well, I think many of us who've been looking at Bible prophecy the last decade, I know the many people that I've run into, and the reason why, I had my channel Face Like the Sun and everything else was because a lot of biblical prophecy seem to have this aspect of, advanced technology, of advanced science in a form of some kind of politicized way. And it just all seems to be built into in scientism, being more specific than just science, but scientism, like a literally a theology, a cosmology.
It tells you who's clean, who's dirty.
The James Webb Telescope examples like this serve as sort of,
they're icons.
I was going to say icons, in sort of that orthodox, the Christian orthodox way, but also in some ways you can say they're miracles.
I was going to say signs and wonders.
Signs and wonders.
And wonders.
And we know about that. We know about the counterfeit signs and wonders that are planned.
Exactly. And this fits into a larger thing. Deconstruction we'll give in a second. Let me finish out this paragraph.
This next sentence I have highlighted in red because it is the most fantastic sentence of the article. Continue.
Hopefully, along with more legislative muscle behind the reporting of UFOs, we'll soon have better technology to record the things as well. Back in February came the word that Harvard's Avi Loeb, a theoretical physicist, is working on. Yeah, he keeps popping up, doesn't he? Is working on what he calls the Galileo Project. Loeb and his team hope to create a network of telescopes all over the globe with the goal of capturing high-resolution photos of actual UAP. And the CERN satellites seem to have, if you talk about the new fancy scientism toys we have floating around, you've got the James Webb Telescope. I think that these little CERN CubeSats, could be a network type thing. Yeah. I would not be surprised if they came out and said, we sent out these electronics to see how radiation got them, but we managed to find a striking discovery. Mm-hmm. And then it's, another one of these types of things. So this sort of accidentally, perfectly transitioned into the conversation we've been having recently on the show of theocracy, and how theocracy, a certain part of our political structure here in the US, which is mirrored around the world in different political systems. But the biggest sort of empty threat that we've been hearing is, democracy is at stake. Democracy is at stake. Democracy is gone. It's fascism. And people weren't really buying the fascism thing because it's ridiculous. The definitions don't match up. And fascism is not really, in its purest form, the biggest threat in America. But it became more apparent that theocracy was the biggest threat, or at least this is what they were able to craft the narrative around. Oh, democracy is at stake, and it's all about theocracy. The Roe v. Wade, the movement towards conservative values in our laws, and legal precedents, things like this. So they're really afraid of theocracy. Now, I think the point has been well made so far that the scientism is already the theocracy that we live under. We live under a scientistic theocracy where, the president of the United States is presenting the miracles done by the scientistic, priests and prophets. And this is what we all need to focus on. Don't focus on the things of this earth. Focus on the things above, like these galaxies that the James Webb Telescope has found. And this, of course, even motivating lawmakers. What does it mean when a religion, scientism, motivates lawmakers? Well, that is a form of theocracy. So we already live in a theocracy. The government, the president says if you're unvaxxed, you're a dirty, unvaxxed animal and you shouldn't have any rights and things like this. We've lived through it. I don't need to repeat all of it for you, but the points are there. But they are making this case that a Christian theocracy is the biggest threat. And indeed, a Christian theocracy would be quite the threat to a scientistic theocracy. So we do not have a battle between democracy and theocracy. We have a battle between scientistic theocracy and Christian theocracy. At least that is sort of the narrative being set up here. And one clip has been making the rounds recently today. This is a clip from, I believe it was some sort of church service or conference type of event.
Flashpoint Live in Atlanta, Georgia, July 1st. Flashpoint Live, July 1st, 2022 in Atlanta,
this
Georgia.
Was a Christian event. Do you have like info pulled up for it? Is there a website or anything?
No, I can probably find something if you want me to.
Okay, why don't you look for something there?
Okay.
But this has been making the rounds online and has been used as evidence for the real threat of Christian theocracy. And I think this is something that we all need to very seriously grapple with, because
pay attention to it, because this is the bait for people, a lot of our listening audience and people like us.
Exactly.
This is the bait.
And let me tell you, this is going to trigger a lot of people in a lot of different ways. Some people will be very excited. Some people will get fired up. Some people may even type amen into the chat. And I want you to know that is a natural response.
It's actually okay that isolated statements in here, could make a whole lot of sense and are agreeable statements that are made in this thing. But yeah.
You're talking about the clip,
right?
Clip,
yeah.
So what? And I want to be clear. I grew up in a Christian tradition that things like this were incredibly common. It's not even like that uncommon. And I don't think what we're about to watch is uncommon for many Christians in America. But there's a very serious conversation we need to have about it. Let's just go ahead and roll the clip. It's a 4-minute clip, and try to listen. And we can talk about it after.
Okay. It is. Yeah, you're right. It's 4 minutes. So let's get going here.
All right, go ahead. All right, Dutch, lead us. So we'll read it together, okay?
Turn it up just a little.
As a patriot of faith, I attest my allegiance first and foremost to the kingdom of God and the Great Commission. Secondly, I agree to be a watchman over our nation concerning its people and their rights for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Whereas we, the church, are God's governing body on the earth. Whereas we have been given legal power from heaven and now exercise our authority. Whereas we are God's ambassadors and spokespeople over the earth. Whereas through the power of God, we are the world influencers. Whereas because of our covenant with God, we are equipped and delegated by Him to destroy every attempted advance of the enemy. We make our declarations. We decree that America's executive branch of government will honor God and defend the
Can I pause it for 1 second?
Sure.
Because it mentions the wokeness right there. And
I think it was a weird word to use.
it is, yeah. So two words that start with W that I want to point out so far. Watchman. This is part of the Watchman thing here that they're talking about, which is like
it's called the Watchman Decree.
Yeah.
This is what they're all chanting together. And it's probably about 10,000 people. And yeah, they're taking the word Watchman.
We've been talking about the Watchman. And there are
I want to hold on.
Sure. Okay,
Let's hold on just a bit, because I think there's a it all needs to be kind of done.
Flushed out. Okay. All right.
It needs to be all at once. Because if we do it piece by piece, we're just going to get lost.
All right. I'm going to back it up just a little bit and then continue here.
Okay.
We decree that evil carries no power, authority, or rights in our land or over our people. We decree that we will operate in unity, going beyond denominational lines in order to accomplish the purposes of God for our nation. And we decree that America shall be saved. We know this country was founded on Judeo-Christian principles. We know the truth, therefore we stand for truth and will never be deceived. We will never stop fighting. We will never, ever give up or give in. We will take our country back. We will honor the one true God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. America shall be saved. Now give it praise.
And for those who are just listening, the video on this, I mean, they're in about a 10,000 person auditorium. Might be a church or an arena of some kind. The full light show, red and blue lights shining everywhere, is a real production. A real production here. This is not nothing. And okay, so a couple of things simply to point out first. I want to start by saying a lot of the things that you heard, and hopefully you were able to hear it all right. Remember, you can find all our sources in our show notes and in the emails that we send out for the newsletter. A lot of the language was really not that foreign to regular Christians across America. I mean, the language was sort of right down the middle, and not even necessarily. I just want to just recognize
caveat
that very few. I probably could not even pick out one thing that was actually said in the words that, anybody really would disagree with, at least like a Christian would disagree with. It's, we do want, we definitely would prefer a president who honors God and defends the Constitution. We would prefer that our laws, are constitutional and righteous. There's nothing wrong with wanting judicial systems, rulings that are constitutional and biblical. Of course, that's a little bit more of a complicated one. Things like this, just like generally wanting the country to
reflect the Christian values that they have been told
our values.
Right. Yeah.
And it's normal for anyone. I say that at the very least, sort of as an axiom, a statement that proves its own self and doesn't need any more explanation, that any person living in America wants the government to reflect their values, their own values. That is just sort of axiomatically true, and therefore not necessarily a bad thing for those who are Christian want these things. However, some things to point out. We've talked with, and even read statements from Dr. Future, who is sort of a grandfather or father of perhaps even a mentor to us when we are starting doing our thing. And he's very much right now have a lot of strong feelings about the merging of Christianity with this type of hyper nationalism, as if the same old trick they used during World War II. Well, you're right. And he breaks it down historically in the 50s, where a lot of the ideas that America is a Christian nation and should be a Christian nation and has always been a Christian nation and things like this was actually crafted in the mid 20th century and sort of retroactively applied to our history. Yeah. And that's a hard thing for people to grasp onto. And that is just how propaganda works. And you're not going to, if you're not already aware of this, you're not going to fully accept that now here, but there's plenty of resources that you can go and check that out, which we'd be happy to help you out with. Send us an email. Now, a couple of strange things. You're right. This is a decree. This is a declaration and a decree, which in my vein of Christianity was not very uncommon.
This was actually written by the name you mentioned prior. I don't think it was a name.
Dutch Sheets.
Dutch Sheets. Yeah.
Is that the name I mentioned?
It is the name you mentioned. It's actually, I believe, written by him.
Yeah. Oh, no. This is, I think I may have met Dutch Sheets, actually.
You can tell us about your long, deep conversation.
Let me tell you about a conversation I had with Dutch Sheets. I mean, he's a very well-known guy and sort of like the charismatic.
Yes. And he's part of the, and it looks like it's listed here, 7 Mountains of Influence.
He's a very 7 mountain-y guy, which has its own issues. For me personally, I look at the 7 mountains, where the Mystery Babylon sits on and, does her thing. It's a whole thing.
I don't know why you would want to take that as your sort of launching pad for your ministry.
Well, I don't want to get into it because I can trust me. I grew up in it. I could defend it here and I could explain it to you in a way that would make sense to you, but that's not the point of this. Sure. We're not here to dig into Dutch Sheets. Okay. The point is the past, 80 to 100 years of American culture crafting, the marriage between sort of religious elite and political elite has been powerful, and it's been consistent, and it's been very effective in a lot of different things. And this is what we're seeing here. We're seeing a religious elite, again, obviously getting mixed up with a political elite for lots of reasons. And I'm not going to say that the religious elite here don't believe that America should be a more Christian nation. I believe that they do. I believe that they're authentic in that. But getting wrapped up in the politics of it all is a dangerous thing. And I would say not even the most dangerous thing. What we have here, when we hear, and this comes from a tweet from Nick Knudsen. I'm not exactly sure who this person is. I probably should. Let's see. Executive Director of Demcast USA, writing for HuffPost. Sure. Democracy is neat. We have, he's a Democrat operative.
One of the things that you were going to point out was that the list here, the decree,
I'm almost there.
Okay. I thought you were going to.
Hold on. No, I'm just mentioning that. Remember, this is being passed around as evidence that theocracy is the biggest threat. And the tweet that came along with it says, if this doesn't scare you, I don't know what will. Christo-fascist indoctrination ceremony, which is a nice little sort of conspiracy theorist theorizing of his own. and it's called the Watchman Decree. Now, just to be clear, what you were kind of getting at earlier is, we didn't invent the term Watchman, and
No.
we didn't, whatever. We're just saying in our sort of genre, Watchman has been a
identifiable
constant identifier.
Yeah. It's because you look at what the Watchmen were doing in the Old Testament and you sort of compare it to what we're doing here. And obviously it's not exactly the same physically, but in terms of
and that's
what we're doing, it's kind of what we're doing. We're kind of looking ahead, saying like, hey, here's what's coming. So
the feeling that Gons is trying to communicate is that we got Adam Carolla by Dutch Sheets.
Dutch Sheets taking over.
We got Adam Carolla by Dutch Sheets. Okay.
Oh man.
Now, within this repeat after me speech thingy, the declaration, they actually have decrees. They say we make our declarations, and they all repeat these decrees.
Yeah.
And, we were just talking about the scientism, the scientistic theocracy of the United States, and CERN launching their occult bots, satellites into the air on 13/13/13, or at 13/13 on 13. Well, these decrees, there's 13 of them, which is an interesting thing, especially when you consider that had to be a very specific number.
Yeah.
Because they include things like, we decree, we take back and permanently control positions of influence and leadership in each of the 7 mountains, highly theological things like, our God-given freedoms according to our Constitution. The president will honor God. Congress will, be righteous. Very theological. Hold on. Let me get there.
Sure.
And then it goes into like number 9. We declare that our nation is energy dependent and that we're strong militarily. And, and it's kind of like they added a few things in there to make it 213.
Now, why would they want to do 13 here?
Well, 13 is a very powerful occult number, as is evident by CERN. Now, of course, we have the 13 colonies, the original 13 states.
I think that's what they were going for.
Knowing the occult proclivities of our founding fathers, of course, was also meant to be a very powerful numerology. So, even in these decrees of the, the sort of 7 mountains thing here, they're using the numerology that made America powerful in the first place, or at least gave a little boost there at the beginning. A couple things in there was, we know this country was founded on Judeo-Christian principles. So conveniently vague. Judeo-Christian principles, because I think they know that if they said the country was founded on Christian values or to be a Christian nation or something, that would be the normal talking point. But because something very intentional and specific is being done with this decree stuff, I think they knew that they couldn't say that. They couldn't say that line. But you can say it was founded on Judeo-Christian principles.
Yeah.
Because those were just the principles of the founding fathers, even though they were not Christian in the way we think about it.
Sure.
Long story.
Go ahead. You're gonna wrap it up.
I was gonna wrap it if you're ready to wrap.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot more for me to say, but we've been kind of going long. But
yeah, I think it's important though.
It is important. The idea of a Judeo-Christian nation is something that the likes of Ben Shapiro pushes quite a bit.
Everybody loves waffles.
Sure.
So, I haven't listened to him in a while, but he was really pushing that whole concept. But yeah, this whole thing, man, it's, yeah, you were talking about the hijacking, but more so it's, yeah, I think the importance of it here is the dangers of being wrapped up into this, because it is, I don't know how to say this without, like, it's kind of our people, like our crowd, our friends, family that are sort of thinking the same way we are, which I know there's not a lot out there, but it is perfect bait for those of us out there
that's what it is.
Because if I was just walking around, I saw like, oh, Watchman's Decree, I'd be like, oh, that's interesting. And based on the issues of, what was happening in this country with the last 20 years, basically being a very progressive liberal thing culturally and legislatively, you knew that there was going to be a cultural whipsaw, snap back. And that's what Trump was. But the danger always from the beginning was, hey, this is really setting up for more, basically like a militant church. And that's exactly what we're seeing develop here.
Yeah. And I got to be completely honest. I know people personally who would watch this and get really, really stoked and get really, really fired up and, join the movement and do the thing. And again, I'm not even saying they're bad people or whatever, but you really got to be careful who you are letting pull your strings. I say it all the time. You can agree with someone, but if they are telling you exactly what you like to hear, in order to get you to act a certain way or to join some sort of group or to do whatever, you really got to be careful because of a couple of things. Like I said, this video is going around and I think is sealing the deal on the whole Christo-fascist theocracy thing. This is sealing the deal for someone. And I'm talking and I think everybody here has some contact with what they're doing in this service, just kind of a decree, a corporate agreement, it was
long though, man. That's, the one thing that
it's very long.
But being in certain churches and like when I just talking as a non-believer, stepping into the world of churches and everything, not growing up in a church, the thing that stood out to me was like, oh, he repeats. Ooh, that's it's got a weird vibe to it. It's
this corporate sort of thing. Yeah. And even in the chat filled with people who, potentially would agree with everything in here. It's the chanting, it's the group think, it's kind of
the hive mind.
When you're in it, you don't really see it. I mean, I grew up, we did a lot of this stuff, and I'm not even necessarily saying it's bad. I mean, when you're talking about taking over a country, that's sort of, you need to take a second to think about that.
Well, it makes perfect sense.
For people who don't have any, let me continue. For people who don't have any context for what this is, never stepped into a church, never done a decree, probably never done any sort of big group thing besides going to a concert or something.
Right. Those secular versions of all that. But
yes, this looks absolutely
terrifying.
Ludicrous.
It looks
terrifying.
Yeah.
You got to remember, if you're a secular person, just say you're a regular Democrat, not even like a wild lefty or something, just a regular Democrat, never really been to church, maybe once on Christmas or something, the really seeker friendly services. And suddenly you see this would be terrifying. And you would immediately be like, oh my gosh, they are like going to war. They are, we don't agree politically, but this is scaring me.
Yeah.
I guess you have to believe that you can't even be mad at them for thinking this way.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just trying to think of, in the context of the right-left paradigm, what would be an equivalent from the left side. And, I couldn't think of much. I mean, I was thinking, Obama did some stuff with race and that really galvanized people early on with the whole, real progressive, as we moved into a very progressive time in the country. Other than that, like, I can't think. It would be kind of like somebody up there doing some I don't know. I'm trying to think, like maybe a pro-abortion thing and having a big old decree about killing babies, like triggering conservatives, right? Like that's the level here.
The same way. Yeah. Well, you just talk about the Satanic Temple. They do a lot of artsy fartsy, First Amendment stuff. So if you saw a group of 10,000 people in a humongous auditorium, all going through, let's just call it some sort of satanic decree.
Sure, yeah.
And they're going piece by piece.
Yeah.
Right. Now, the Satanic Temple would say, even they would say, like, we're doing this as to fight against the First Amendment stuff, mocking it, whatever. So it doesn't matter. But even if they were true and we just didn't, whatever, but you see 10,000 people making decrees as we will take over the government. Yeah. The government will serve Satan.
God gave
Bodily
us power. Satan gave us power.
Abortions will, like that would be absolutely terrifying. But for the people in there, they're like, yeah, we do this every week.
we decree that our judicial system will issue rulings that are satanic and constitutional.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they will hold to the principles of the Necronomicon and the Constitution of the United States. So you got to put yourself in their shoes. I probably in a different world, I could have actually been at this place.
Sure,
I may have been there. I may have been, running the light board or something. Yeah, the soundboard
getting all
this
pumped,
event.
like, yeah, it doesn't sound so bad.
In a different world, we both of us, Gons, could have been in this room.
Well, I've had a lot of moments being in rooms like this where I'm ready to shut the whole thing down. I have the power to shut this thing down.
Sure. And so the point is, it doesn't matter what you agree or disagree in that stuff. The point is, this is what's being used as bait. And whoever jumps on board with this, you are not just partnering with whatever fellow Christians and hoping that our government holds up Christian and constitutional values. That's what they want you to think, is that it's just that. But what you are interacting with is honestly a perverse contract between these religious elites and the political elites that we have not seen since, the 1950s, when they got together in boardrooms, inventing the stories of our Christian forefathers, inventing the stories that this is a Christian nation as an absolute control mechanism. Yeah. You are watching the control mechanism propaganda at work here. And to get caught up in it, I'm telling you, your home is not here, folks. Your home is not America. You are not citizens of America. Of course, I love my country, and you do too. And we want what's best for this country. But just remember, don't let these people trick you into thinking that, you are at some, that this is the final aspect, the final expression of your true Christianity is to jump into this sort of mind think. Yeah. And again, you can agree with everything. They have agreeable points in a lot of cases, but it is it is not for your benefit that this is happening. And so this is happening not just at this event. It's happening all over the internet. Yeah. It's happening all over the place, and it takes different forms. Yeah. So if anything, we just need to get good at spotting it.
Right. Yeah. I was going to say that, I have friends and stuff that send me text messages with either video or, a blog post or something that's a little more on the fringy side of the conservative conversation, the Republican side usually. And, some of the people who send that, they're doing it to share. Oh, I just lost Basil. Hold on one sec. He just decided to leave. All right. That's how you're going to do it, huh, buddy? Okay. There he is. Hold on. Hey, they knocked you out, huh?
Yeah, that was just a straight hang up. That was weird.
Yeah. Thanks for hanging up on me.
They don't like it. Dutch Sheets is like, cut them off.
What was I saying? I was trying to make a point about something.
You said you had friends who were in the zone.
Well, yeah, they send stuff, and are you gonna give me video of other than?
Oh yeah, but just keep talking. I'll give you the
video. My point was always that this is not good. That this is weaponized stuff, and I think the Trump era created a big reason for because it Trump himself couldn't maintain the level of rabbit hole that he created with his running and getting elected and all that stuff, 2016, 2015, 2016, 2017. I think a lot of people were waking up. There was the red wave and all this stuff, and we're finally talking about all these issues that we have been talking about for decades. The Epstein thing is a conversation, and everything. It all kind of explodes, right? But he himself can really maintain it. QAnon comes in, really takes the mantle in terms of those fringy conversations.
Really
and the
good comparison.
Yeah. And then we just continue to see sort of the militarization and really at the beginning, it was more like false, like framing people almost, like making them look like they're doing something worse. But as time has gone on, it just seems like, okay, well, they're an identified group. Everybody knows who they are, either if it's the Oath Keepers or the whatever, the Proud Boys or whatever it may be. And now we're seeing, I think, just even more like this video is like a culmination point of all that.
Institutionalized.
Right. And the number 9 does make me laugh. We declare that our nation is energy independent.
I mean, you got to agree with that one.
I mean,
but it's funny. We declare that it is energy independent. It is not currently energy independent. It is. It
depends on how you measure, I guess.
Yeah,
how you measure energy and independence. But yeah, no, it's just one of those things. It's like, wow, there's a lot of baggage with this one. This one's.
Well,
this one's
there's a very specific flavor too, which again used to be so fringy. I'm telling you, folks, I grew up in a pretty, not even just Pentecostal and charismatic, but as fringy as it could get. And I love it, by the way. I am not. I do not mean to speak ill of my upbringing in these traditions, and it was a wonderful way to learn a lot of things. But this language as, we're God's governing body on earth, the legal power, we've been given the legal power from heaven and now exercise our authority. We're God's ambassadors and spokespeople. That one's a little
empowerment, charismatic empowerment stuff. Yeah.
The sort of claiming of ultimate authority over the earth because of our Christianity.
Right.
There's theological conversations to have there, and that's totally cool. But those are not theological conversations that somebody on the outside is going to like very much less understand. To somebody else, I mean, this just looks straight up crusades.
Yeah, no, when you politicize it like this, absolutely, it's not going to make sense.
It does not belong in politics, this kind language.
Right, yeah. So this right here, because of our covenant with God, we are equipped and delegated. Equipped and delegated by him to destroy every attempted advance of the enemy, right?
Now, we know who the enemy is.
Right.
Okay. We know the adversary.
We do not wrestle with flesh and blood. Read the other parts of the Bible.
The spiritual thing, yeah, exactly. The enemy is, but in this context, in a political thing, and especially if you're a secular person looking at this, the enemy is kind of a theologically correct but vague explanation of talking about, the devil or something. But to somebody who doesn't know that, they think you're talking about Democrats. Somebody reads this from the outside. Because of our covenant with God, we are equipped and delegated by him to destroy every attempted advance of the liberal mob, of Hillary Clinton. That's what they hear. They don't know that you're talking about the adversary in this case. They think you're talking about them. This is a very threatening to anybody on the outside who's reading this thing. Of course, I believe that when they wrote this declaration, they didn't mean for it to go national. Maybe they did. Maybe that is part of the psyop. Maybe that is part of the strategy.
If anybody is well-funded, well-connected with the intelligence agencies, it's this side or this whole operation here. The Watchman decree and all that stuff. I mean, I understand you had your experiences with that and stuff, but I mean, just from me not growing up in it at all and then approaching things with the view I do, My whole thing is like, man, what is going on? Like, what money? Where's the money coming from for all these big churches? Like, where can we have a little transparency there just to find out like who and what, if at all, any intelligence operatives or ties?
Oh, and they absolutely do.
They have
it's
to.
historically confirmed that, the biggest churches, the biggest preachers, they were always involved in politics. They were always giving the messages that they were, if not straight up given money to say, they were invited into the room. They had a seat at the table. They were given a chance, to have input. And when they were included, they were in the smoky rooms. And I believe that it was authentic that they thought, God put me in this room.
It's presented as like, we want you to help us save the country.
Right.
Kind of thing,
God let me in this room so I can help lead the country towards God. Yeah. When unfortunately, and that is very possible, but it is also very possible that intelligence agencies and very crafty lizard people in the political elite knew that would be how it was perceived.
Well, it's like shooting fish in a barrel to these folks when it comes to this psyop.
Is.
It's really just across the country. They finally did it. They have aroused the sleeping conservative majority of the country. Yeah. Now let's weaponize.
Here's the punchline.
Yeah.
Here's the punchline to the whole thing, and we can move on. The whole punchline, this whole thing, all the language, all the decrees, all the big church, the 10,000 Christians, the talking about the one true God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. America will be saved. We're here to take our country for God. And so we're going to vote for Trump. We're going to vote for Donald J. Trump.
We will launch a new age.
This might be
the punchline.
This could be the downfall. I mean, if you think about what currently there is no unified Trump support on the Republican side of the aisle, right? It's very divided, is it not?
I think he just announced.
Did he really?
I think he just announced he's running like this morning.
Oh my gosh.
Hold on. Let's do, because I forgot to bring that to the show.
This podcast is becoming something very different from what we...
I read it today during my very special morning time, after my 3 cups of coffee.
Yeah, your surveillance. Sewage surveillance deposit.
Yeah. So while you look that up. So, I mean, and that's the whole point, that's and mixed with all the insanity that a person on the outside who would read that, listen to that, get terrified, and then realize that all this God talk, all this authority from heaven talk means that these people are going to vote for Trump would be even that much more terrifying. And honestly, I'm not going to lie, Gons, even I was a bit terrified watching this. And like I said, I could have been in that room. I could have been in that room. And I'm not saying that I shouldn't have been in that room. I could figure out a way to get in that room today if I really wanted to. But I honestly did have a little bit of a sinking feeling. I did not like it.
Yeah. Well,
any word on Trump's
this is it's interesting, though, because I think
he informally announced is what it is.
The Hill here has Trump says he's made up his mind about 2024. Big decision is timing of announcement. So,
right.
He's made the announcement of the announcement, basically. So, he's going to run. We know this. That we'll just have to see what happens with the DeSantis and, some of these bigger names out there. Which actually, I don't know who else is out there other than DeSantis that might.
It's DeSantis and a couple of other weirdos, but it's probably not going to happen.
Marjorie Taylor Greene, let's go.
That would be hilarious.
Bring those space lasers.
What a slap in the face of Hillary if Marjorie Taylor Greene was the first
and what if she
female
did it?
President.
What if she did it with the Jewish laser beams behind her, just anybody that tries to question her gets zapped.
Campaign logo.
Calling fire down from heaven. It's all coming true. All right.
And I know we're going to lose some listeners from that. And that's not great, but
I was going to say that when we first started doing like shows and stuff, and I remember bringing up some of these topics, not this exact thing, but like just where this road started in my mind anyway, like this whole conversation about kind of a weaponized Christianity, and especially like in charismatic circles.
Yeah.
And I remember you pushed back a lot because you kind of came from that background, which is fine. I actually liked the fact that you had more personal experience with it and you had more personal connection with some of the individuals and stuff. But it's interesting to see you sort of not come around, might be the wrong term, but just in terms of seeing this here now.
Definitely the world is different.
Right.
The world is different. Yeah.
The context of it all is different. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it's been a long journey, and it's probably tough. And you out of anybody out there would probably understand even more growing up in that environment and then seeing sort of what's happened to it and having that political. And it's kind of the same way with what I felt with the sort of an independent content creating crew of people that are Christian out there. And then all of a sudden Trump and Q and Flatter. I mean, it's just like, what happened to all? I mean, I guess different. We're just not just important at all. Or
back when conspiracy theories were not like a national security concern. It's just the world is totally different. I'll just say it just because you brought it up. Theologically, I think a big part of what what you were referring to in our olden days, like theologically, I'm happy to have discussions. Will probably find myself on the side of, defending a lot of the weirder stuff that people don't like about, charismatic and Pentecostal stuff, that sort of crowd. Mm-hmm. But when I see it being so obviously co-opted for the use for political purposes, for sort of a perverse brotherhood of that theology and politics, I'm happy to draw a line there.
Sure.
And I know people personally who would totally disagree with me, and that's okay. And I'm, again, absolutely 100% sure there's at least a handful of people who will never listen to this show again because of that segment.
Well, and somebody pointed out, and this is a good point too, and this is the kind of stuff that might be hard to refute. If I'm not mistaken, and I saw somebody in the chat mention it, that they didn't mention the name Jesus once in that whole thing. Did they? That
is not Christ. There was no Christ.
I think
there was no. You think so? Let's find out. Because I think it was all God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and
Judeo-Christian, right?
Judeo-Christian
was very,
but there was prominent. No Jesus.
I don't think Jesus was mentioned.
No mention of the gospel.
Right.
It was the church and God.
Constitution.
God. And how is that? I mean, if that is not. Oh my gosh! This segment is still going, and that's fine.
I'm sorry, because
but it's an important conversation. Clippies will need to remember that because this needs to be in the clip. There's no Jesus, there's no Christ, there's no gospel, there's no salvation. None of that mentioned in this decree, which to me screams this was written with the help or entirely by the government, by CIA,
because they'll mention God,
somebody who wasn't there.
Yeah.
Because this is not Jesus focused at all. It's not salvation focused. None of it is focused on the spirit or eternity. It is all focused. It uses God, big G God. And by the way, it says God. It never says Yahweh, it does say God of Abraham, Isaac, or Jacob, but as we know,
how broad.
It's deist.
It's deist.
This is a deist writing.
Yeah.
Much like our founding fathers. And I think that's why they're not having a problem with it, is because this is how a deist would write to Christians. And this is the core of the deception that has been delivered upon American Christians for a long time, because there is no Christian theology in here. There is deist theology. And I think that was a really, really good observation, Gons.
Thanks. And just one more thing. I'm looking at just this here and we'll move on. Well, just for time's sake, but it says here, as a patriot of faith, I attest my allegiance first and foremost to the kingdom of God and the Great Commission. Something. Okay, fine. Sure.
Okay. The commission, secondly, the Great Commission was, okay.
Yeah. Second, I agree to be a watchman over our nation concerning its people and their rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So it's not a watchman to the church. It's watchman to the nation.
Right.
So there's that slight thing there to co-op the whole concept of a watchman in the church and not be about the church. I mean, they're kind of trying to make it quasi about the church, but it's more so about the nation. So, and the pursuit of life, liberty, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which is that giant American psyop. So,
Yep.
Anyway.
Yep. It takes a lot to break that apart. You know, I'm glad we did it because, on first go through, I mean, I started the segment with saying, look, there's a lot of agreeable stuff in there, but the more you read it, the more you break it down, the more it is obvious that it is not something that we any of us should be messing with.
Yeah.
You are handing over your puppet strings to something you do not want to have control. Yeah. And it's going to work. That's the problem. It's going to work for a lot of different reasons. Yeah. It's going to work for goals and aims that we don't even know about.
Yeah.